Joining us now, she was an All-American at Minnesota, led them to their first ever trip to the College World Series in 2019, was a Big Ten Pitcher of the Year, currently playing for the OKC Spark, also an assistant coach currently at UNF, coming off a strong year. I speak of Amber Fiser joining us for the first time here on In the Circle on D1 Softball. How you doing?
Doing great. Thanks for having me.
What is it like during this busy time for you where you're still actively playing professionally, you're coaching collegiately, you're doing a little bit of everything? What is that like for you right now?
It's definitely been a little bit of something I have to get used to. There's a lot that goes into it. Obviously, coaching and stuff in the fall, but I get a few months during the summer, and Jeff thankfully is allowing me, and UNF is allowing me the opportunity to continue playing out my dreams and playing for as long as I can. So, a lot of stuff for UNF will die down for me a little bit during the summer because that allowed me to focus just on me strictly playing. But if they need anything at all, they hit me up basically and ask like, "Hey, Amber, can you do this?" And I'll just help them as much as I possibly can. But I'll do a lot of recruiting in the fall, and they'll do a lot of recruiting in the summer. So we kind of tag team that.
How did you two connect and come together from that standpoint? Because you obviously were playing coming out of college, you played at Athletes Unlimited, you did a little bit of everything. When did in your mind it registered, I want to get into coaching, and then how did you two connect?
Yeah, so I was a grad assistant at Mizzou the last 2 years prior to UNF, and I worked a lot with Coach Anderson, obviously, and I learned so much from her and her staff. I mean, they are absolutely amazing. I can't thank them enough for all they've helped me to get to where I am today. And so they kind of started reaching out to me. UNF did when, like, late in the spring season, I would say. And I originally knew Mario, our assistant coach, first because he wanted me to be an assistant for him right as I got out of college, and he was at Valpo. So I already had a previous connection with Mario. Mario got the assistant coaching job at North Florida, and Jeff had learned about me or knew about me because I played UCF quite a bit, and he used to be at UCF. So North Florida actually played my team in Florida a few years ago at UCF when he was with North Florida. So it's kind of different times where paths have crossed. And so he basically just kept tabs on me since then and reached out. And yeah, that's how that all started.
How appreciative are you about Coach Conrad? A lot of coaches maybe would be hesitant or not. Hey, you can't do both coaching and players, so you got to pick one. Whereas
Yeah.
here, he lets you do both. How appreciative is that? Because that's rare. That's not common in the sport.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things is like I've had other job opportunities that have opened up for me this summer, but there's it's gonna basically you have to be able to balance this and understand what's most important for you. So I understand now that where I'm at, like I couldn't be happier. I think that Jeff and Coach Mario, the staff, the girls are absolutely amazing. And, I could go somewhere where I could get quote unquote paid more, but it's not always about the money. And Jeff, again, lets me play and continue to play for as long as I can. And I feel like a lot of times as you move up in the coaching world or go into the SEC, go into the Power Fives, those opportunities to continue to play get limited a little bit. And it's not going to be like that everywhere. It really just depends on your staff. But um, I honestly cannot thank him enough because, like you mentioned, like it's not going to be able to happen all the time. So I'm just very, very grateful that they allow me to do that.
You what's it like? How are you different as a coach versus being a player? How are you different? You feel you're different personality wise? How would you describe Amber Fiser the coach versus Amber Fiser the player?
Um, it's something I've been getting used to. I feel like I give a lot of advice that maybe I should take my own advice sometimes. It's a lot more reflection, I think, that way. So working with my pitchers and everything, breaking down their mechanics and trying to help them with certain things that they want to focus on, it kind of helps remind me of myself of the sometimes like maybe when I'm struggling, I need to do this, things that I teach them. I think the biggest thing is for me personally that I coach like about and focus on is mentality. So helping them be as mentally tough as I can out there on the mound, I think also helps me reflect as well when it comes into games and be like, what would I tell my pitchers here? So I think being a coach and just being younger allows me to relate to them a lot more so I can understand what those players are either thinking, the situations that they're going through, things like that, and kind of help them guide, their way through softball practices, games, life, things like that. So I'm just very grateful to have the opportunity because, like I said, the girls are amazing and I just want to help them become the best people they can on and off the field.
You helped them last year, your first year there, win 35 games. UNF won 35 games, got to the ASUN championship game up there in, I believe it was Alabama, right? The neutral site for
Chakalaka Park.
Chakalaka. Very good. See,
Yeah.
you nailed it better than I did. How would you describe your first year on the staff, and what are some things you learned that you'll take with you here in a year two?
Yeah, I learned a lot. I mean, it's a grind definitely being on the other side of the coaching world. And instead of being a player, there's a lot more that goes behind the scenes when it comes to prepping a team, travel, food, like apparel, all those other types of things. And so I think it's just overall helping me become, a better coach and better person. Just because I try and satisfy everyone's needs. Obviously, not everyone's always going to be happy, but you do your best. But I think it's just really cool to watch all the girls grind and see the people that, it doesn't matter at the time at the ASUN tournament, it's the end of the season, who's going to step up and be the toughest team to win it all. And I just think it's helped me in so many different ways of life than I ever expected as well. When it comes to me balancing, playing professional and being a coach, all of that stuff ties in together and help me with my time management and prioritize the things that I need to.
The impressive thing is you won the 35 games. In covering you all in person, you had injuries you had to deal with.
Mm-hmm.
Even in this pitching side, you had some injuries you had to deal with.
Yeah.
Just so you had some adversity right off the bat as the
Mm-hmm.
first year coach. How were you able to overcome that? And I know you wanted more, and we'll get into like the big goals that I know Coach Conrad has for
Mm-hmm.
UNF and that you have, but to really have that success, considering so much of the injuries you had to deal with, there's something to be said for that. How were you able to overcome that and deal with that as a young coach?
I think it was hard at first just because, my pitchers were down a few different times and we got very limited on who we could use during games. But overall, I think you just have to remain keeping that strong connection with them outside the field and make sure that their mental health is stronger than anything. So even though some days that they may not physically be feeling well, just sitting down and talking to them to see where they're mentally at, because if they're not in a good mental headspace, it's going to take longer for them to physically come back. So I just made sure to keep those personal connections close and understanding what they need and what they believe is going to help get them back to where they want to be, and just being a good listener to what they want. I think that's what kind of separated everything. Like Hallie, for instance, she was, our number one / number two. Her and Benny tag teamed a lot, and Hallie can only throw one game or one day prior to throwing that weekend series. So it's just, whereas, Benny or Kyla or AC, they may have to throw multiple days a week. It's just understanding how the different pitchers work and the things that they need to mentally prepare and physically prepare themselves for the weekend. So just being a good listener to them, I think, is what separated all of that. Everyone's not going to always be healthy. It's just being able to learn to manage your own body and understand what you need for yourself.
That's impressive that you figured that out, that you realize every pitcher is different, they can handle X amount, because you were a workhorse at Minnesota. Like you threw every inning, it seemed like, and
Yeah.
definitely did during the postseason run. But you were able to adapt and realize, well, this pitcher can't be me. Because sometimes players that come out of college that are starting into coaching, they want the player to do what they would do. But that's not
Mm-hmm.
realistic. And you seems like you have learned that quickly, have you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think just, going through my experiences in Minnesota, obviously, I did pitch a lot of innings, but came with that was my body awareness and understanding, hey, today, like on Mondays were my recovery days. And I understood every single Monday what my routine was, what I needed to do to make sure my body was going to be right and get my mind ready for the next series. So I think that a lot of pitchers now don't understand fully what to be fully aware of themselves. So I challenge my pitchers every day, like when it comes to either mentality or mechanics, like, hey, what are you feeling with this pitch? Just be able to make those adjustments sooner, or things that they can identify outside of softball. Um, so I think that's just kind of how that all ties in.
You obviously played. Piper Ritter was your pitching coach at Minnesota. You coached under obviously Larissa Anderson at Missouri prior to coming to UNF. I'm curious the influences that they have. How much of them is in your pitching philosophy, especially someone like Piper Ritter, who
Mm-hmm.
obviously coached you and recruited you, as well as others like Sarah Moulton and Sarah Granawagen and a long list at Minnesota. And then Larissa Anderson speaks for herself as well. I would imagine you have a little bit of both of them in your philosophy. Is that accurate?
Oh, absolutely. Pressure pitching and stuff that Coach Anderson focuses on, all the obstacles that Coach Ritter made me pitch through and work on, as much as I hated them some days, that's what helped me make the pitcher that I am today. Um, It's trying to find different ways to make it mentally challenging as you can. That way, when they get into a game, they feel free, they feel prepared for that moment. And there was a lot of days where Coach Ritter had me at a very, very high pitch count. And I mean, where you're with I think it was the winter before the World Series. I'm like, Coach Ritter, like, I feel like I'm throwing 200 pitches like 5 times a week. And it wasn't that extreme by any means. But, at the end of the day, like that prepared me for that long season. So there's been a few times that I've reached out to Coach Ritter, just trying to come up with different bullpen ideas, different things I can work on with the pitchers and helping understand them more. So she's been a big figure for me when it comes into the coaching world. And I just can't thank her enough for helping me get to where I am today.
Has coaching helped you be a better player, or do you think you still playing has making you a better coach? Which one do you think has had a more bigger impact?
I don't know. I think they both have different moments. It kind of just depends on the situation. I will say that me being a player this summer, I think me being a coach obviously has helped me look at things from a different perspective from every single position out there. It's not just me focusing on what I'm doing pitching. It's me focusing on like what the purpose of the defense is doing this, or what are the hitters are trying to adjust to. Things I can pick up to help. Mention something to my offense when they're hitting or something. Not like they need help. They're got a stacked offense. I'm not gonna lie. And so I think that there's just different times where those all shine through, and everything just balances each other out. But I think overall, it's just become a great way for me to be very thankful where I'm at. I'd be a great teammate, and I'll take all these different lessons that I'm learning from some of the best players in the world that I have on my team, and being able to take that and share that information or share those tips and tricks with my girls at UNF. So
You're obviously playing with OKC Spark, winning a championship. You got a chance to talk to my friend Jenna Becerra, who obviously has her own podcast, and she also does stuff for us at D1 Softball. And you told her, and I'm kind of paraphrasing, this has like been the most fun that you've
mm-hmm.
had playing. What is it about this team and this year that it's been the most fun for you in a while?
Um, First of all, just coming to OKC, and Robert and Tina have created such an amazing atmosphere here, and allowing, they really push women empowerment and women growing the game and things like that. And just the amount of connections that I made within the first week here, just outside of softball, and helping me set myself up for my future, is absolutely insane. I cannot thank them enough for everything that they have done to grow this game and help us put us in a position to where we want to be. And so there's that aspect of it. But I also think that, I look to my left and right, and I'm seriously playing with some of the best players in the world. And not many people can say that. And it's just the different level of respect that everyone has for each other is something that's truly so special. There's times in college where you have like, oh, I don't like that team, or, we're rivals, things like that. That's not what it's like in the pros. It's everyone's so good and deserves to be there. And everyone just has so much respect. You can't overlook anyone. Just being able to have the confidence with the defense that I have behind me. I've never felt so free in my life other than, there's a few years in college where I felt like that too, especially the World Series year. But it's just cool to, turn around and see that field and, all those players that you have behind you.
Any players you got to meet that you were like, oh, wow, that's cool. I got to meet this person after maybe competing against them or not knowing them well enough? Because obviously there's a lot of Sooners on your roster. How would you describe meeting some of these players that maybe you didn't know before?
I would say fangirl more than anything. I never played OU in college, never played against them or anything like that. So I previously played with Jossie at the Vipers 2 summers ago. So I already had been her teammate before, and I was excited to be her teammate again. But just being able to, actually play with some of the OU girls or the OSU girls, we got quite a few of them as well. And, you hear about all these names growing up and are playing against them. Keely Richard, Donnie, all these amazing pitchers, and Maddie Penta, Alex Stracco, Keelani Ricketts, what a legend she is. Just you want to learn something different from every single one of them just to help you perform better for yourself. So it's more of just like, yes, you're in awe, but you just want to be able to learn and feed off of one another, because not any one of us are better than another player or person. Like, we all genuinely are very happy for one another and want to be each other's best teammates and biggest supporters. So
what's your thoughts on the state of the pro game in softball? You've played just about everybody, part of the pro game you can. You did Athletes Unlimited. You mentioned the Vipers. You've done the WPF. You've done a little bit of everything. How would you describe the pro game, and what do you think is next for the pro game evolution here?
Yeah, I think it's hard because some people struggle, and I know I struggled with it too, right out of college. You're playing professional and you're simply just playing because you love the game, or maybe you struggle just because there's nothing that you're actually fighting for. There's no World Series, there's no, like end goal necessarily, but with AAU, you have the point system of where you want to finish on the leaderboard. So it's individualized, but yet if your team does good and stuff like that, it's going to help you, get to where you want to be on the leaderboard. But I know that next year they're switching to traditional softball. They're going to be playing with the four teams. And then, you have the WPF and AP. Yeah, what ours is our independent league. And, we're playing the traditional game of softball. So it's more so just being aware of the opportunity that you have and enjoying the moment, enjoy just continuing to play the game. And, we had our championship cup. We'll have pitcher of the year, player of the year. We didn't have it this year just because it's brand new with our independent league, but years coming forward, like, if you have that as your personal goal, like that's something that's definitely gonna be able to work towards.
What it's interesting because I feel like in a lot of ways you're a part of a lot of firsts. When you were in Minnesota, part of their first ever trip to the World Series. Here, first pro, league independent trying to start it up. They're coaching. You're coaching at UNF. They're trying to get that first conference, NCAA tournament appearance. Is that something that excites you? Or I don't know, maybe it's coincidence, but it seems like you're part of a lot of historical firsts. It seems like
First
throughout your
Viper to
career.
ever sign too.
Right, right. There you go.
I don't know. I guess I never looked at it that way, and I think I'm just very grateful. I don't even know what to say. I'm glad people believe in me, and people want to give me a chance. And I'm someone that's always just want to not even live up to everyone's expectations, but just I have high expectations for myself, and I never want to be someone that people question. So I want to live up to what I stand for myself and the things that I've gone through to get to where I am, and it's constantly just proving it to myself that I deserve to be here and I can make a difference in softball or the world in general.
When you walked to OKC, Oklahoma City this year, how quickly did memories of 2019 pop up?
Oh, so much, so much. Just being able to pitch on that field every single
Yeah.
day is just, it gives you goosebumps, but it's truly the best place to play in the world, in my opinion. So it's nothing like it.
What What's the first memory that pops into your mind when I bring up 2019 and that World Series run?
Just being able to, I mean, walking from the bullpen with Sid Smith right before our first game against UCLA. And she looked at me and she's like, "Are you nervous?" And I'm like, "No, I'm not nervous." And then I get out there in the circle and I throw like three straight balls in a row. And I'm like, "Oh my gosh, I guess I am." But no, I mean, walking in with Sid Smith, looking around at the crowd and just seeing it completely packed all the way around, but it's just something I'll never forget.
I remember that regional was dramatic because you had
Hmm.
Georgia dramatic
Hmm.
there. You had Nicole Newman and Drake in that
Yep.
region, if I remember correctly. You got past that region. I think you won one on a walk off, if I recall, if my memory's
Against
correct.
Georgia. Yep.
Okay, so good. I figured you'd be on top of that. And then you beat LSU in the super
Hmm.
regionals to get in. And for people that followed it closely, Minnesota was the number one ranked team 2 years earlier. Thought they should
Hmm.
have hosted, did not. And so it almost kind of made up to that to some extent. What was it like through that journey? You won Big Ten Pitcher of the Year that year and put Minnesota in a spot where you were a top 8 national seed. For a school that's never done it before, what was that year like? Take me through that journey.
I mean, everyone talks about it being a Cinderella story, and that's exactly what it was. I mean, I know going into that year, it was very hard for me mentally. I had a lot of family and personal stuff going on that I was battling. And so I sat my team down before the season even started. And I said, "Hey, like, I'm really going to need you guys this year. Like, I'm really leaning on y'all because the things I'm going through at home." And so from then on out, I mean, my dad kept telling me, like, "I have a weird feeling about this team." And I'm like, "Okay, Dad, like, thank you. I appreciate your support." But, um, and my mom and dad were both battling very important and serious things going on in their life. And so I was being able to rely more on my teammates and grow closer relationships with them. And I think that honestly, that year, like, I wasn't playing for myself. I was playing for my dad and I's dream. I was playing for, everyone that I represented at home. I even got a tattoo on my wrist that says "Remember who you are," because one, that's my favorite childhood movie, Lion King. but two, like it's so important to me because you remember who you are, like where I came from. I came from a small town in Iowa that, not many people ever thought that I would get to where I was at today. And just being able to represent so much more than myself, so much more than the University of Minnesota. I thought that was more important to me than anything. And so, like I said, no one was going to get in my way that year. No one was going to beat me. I didn't care who you were I was facing. Like I was going to find a way to beat you because I knew where I wanted to get at the end of the season. And so I just kind of became numb to everything else, used softball, that one game, that one pitch at a time mentality, and faced every moment that I needed to. And in that moment, I wasn't trying to think ahead or anything like that, just truly enjoying where I was at that moment and finding a way to win.
You remember what went through your mind when that last out was recorded and you realized you're going to Oklahoma City?
Oh, I remember walking out there in the seventh inning, and we always do a little powwow before the first pitch of the inning, and I'm like, all right, this is seriously the toughest inning of the entire game, because LSU was not about to get shut out, and they were not about to, roll over on us. So I knew they were going to become very aggressive, and they were going to try and find a way to get on one, and I just my insides, the lefties were not great in college. And so I'm like, I'm just going to do my best here. And she called an inside pitch and hit second base. And next thing you know, we're going to the World Series. I didn't know who to run to at the moment because I'm just like, I don't know what's going on. But then we dogpiled and yeah, it was awesome.
Best feeling in your playing career to date?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I'll never forget that moment. I'll never forget how loud the crowd was. It's something that, I would even say it's better than being physically at the World Series because that nothing like that has ever happened at Minnesota. And
Right.
just the amount of support and, everything leading up until that moment was all worth it.
5-year anniversary of that team, by
Yeah.
the
Oh my
past.
gosh, that makes me feel old. It doesn't seem like that long ago.
No, it's springs. It's a sprint. It's a sprint. What got you into
Yeah.
going to Minnesota and playing softball?
So, I was originally just, playing for the Beverly Bandits. And I had went out to Colorado and I got a bunch of different, offers and like looks at that tournament and everything like that. But Coach Hollister and Coach Merchant, Coach Ritter, all really stood out to me. They were pursuant on me. And I just loved the way they carried themselves. I loved what they saw in me, how they believed in me and everything. And so I stayed in contact with them and it just kind of went from there. But I didn't even I committed before I even stepped foot on campus because I truly believed in what they wanted to build and what they believed in me. So I just wanted to play for them.
Wow, I did not know that.
Hmm. Hmm.
That's pretty well. That's a who's who too of the staff there.
Yeah.
Was it hard with the transition to the coaching staff? Although
Yes.
Piper stayed, which I would imagine was big for you because you had that
Hmm.
constant and you rely in going to Piper, even when the
Hmm.
coaching change when Jessica obviously decided to go back to her alma mater at Stanford, which everybody understood, and then Jamie Traxel get in what normally would have been probably a tough transition. The fact that Piper was there maybe helped that.
Hmm. Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I was heartbroken when Coach Ritter, or not Coach Ritter, Coach Alistair and Coach Merchant left. I mean, they're still this day, they're just amazing people. And, what they're doing at Stanford is unreal. And, one of my favorite coaches I've ever played for. Just, they're just a different type of human. And I think everyone should have a chance to work with them or meet them or anything. They're just amazing people. And yes, I was very thankful that Coach Ritter stayed. It's allowed us to, grow closer and work toward that goal together. Jamie came in and it was a very tough situation to step into. I mean, anyone that's going to try and fill Coach Alistair and Coach Merchant's footsteps is just going to be like, I'm sorry, but it's going to be hard. Um, but that transition year was rough, but we came back the next year and went to the World Series. So obviously, it was a great transition after that. And just the way we were as a team and a coaching staff that year was, I've never felt closer to anyone or as much of his family as I did that year. So,
We're speaking with Amber Fiser here on In the Circle on D1 Softball. I was riveted by your interview with Jenna. And Jenna's very good. If you get, I've been on her show. She just has a
mhm,
way where you can start opening up to her even more than you would want. But I was riveted in that because you two had a conversation about you brought your last year at Minnesota, where you said you had it was a miserable experience that year because you had some
mhm,
mental health stuff you were going through, which if people watched you, they wouldn't have noticed. If you look at the
right.
numbers, they would have noticed you got to NCAA in 16 wins. How the peaks. How are you getting that situation? But you got out of it. You even said that you really stopped the joy of softball
Mhm.
because of that. It took you a while to get back that joy of softball. How were you able to overcome all that? Because I would imagine that is something that you could share with maybe your players moving forward who might go through similar things of going
Mhm.
through stuff. And you even brought it up earlier about checking in on your pitchers to see how they're doing mentally as well, because this sport can deal with you mentally. Forget the off the field stuff, even on
Mhm.
the field stuff can give you sometimes some mental health stuff to deal with.
Yeah. I mean, I was miserable that year just because of COVID and all the restrictions and, like the differences between conferences, what was expected of us, not being able to see our teammates outside of team practice. It's truly something that's indescribable. And it was a very, very, very rough year. I wasn't even able to accomplish what I had goals for myself that year just because mentally, like there's some games that I was there and some games that I wasn't. Um, do I think about things were different and back to, normal? I think I could have had a much better year, obviously, but we can't control what happened. Um, so, just like looking back and being thankful for like the people that I did have in those moments to support me and get me through what I was going through. And, just understanding that I wasn't the only one dealing with all that either. Like we were all in that situation and it was, again, out of our control. So I went to AU and I started learning from some of the most amazing people, like people that I look up to, continue to look up to today. And, they're an inspiration to a lot of girls. And so I started falling in love with the game again, just because I was simply just out there in a different environment, having fun, and just loving the game, just to learn from people that have been playing for much longer than I have and the legends of softball. So it was then that I started to, really enjoy what I was doing again. And every year I've continued to love the game and be more appreciative of it every single moment since then. Because at that moment, 2020 and 2021, where softball was basically taken away because of COVID, things get taken away very quick and you don't understand how appreciative you should really be in that moment. So every year after that, I think I've been more appreciative every moment since.
Well said. I mean, you're right. That was a weird time and unique
Yeah.
because in your situation, the Big Ten that year, you didn't play non-conference. You were strict to just conference games only, which was weird. I think you played in Leesburg, and like you said, you couldn't go anywhere. It wasn't too different.
Mm-hmm.
Like I remember that year, like I would come to the stadium ballpark, but you kind of were like in your own little bubble, and then you couldn't even talk to players or coaches. You had to do like a Zoom, even though you're in the same
Mm-hmm.
complex. It was a very, I think it was weird for everybody during
Yeah.
that time. Uh, is that something you've dealt with, but now having overcome all that because you've got the joy, is that
Mm-hmm.
something that will help you from a coaching standpoint when a player is going through some stuff? Hey, I've been there as far as dealing with some stuff. This is how you can overcome it. Is that do you think things happen for a reason? Do you believe things that was meant to
Mm-hmm.
happen because it's going to pay off for you now? Maybe it didn't at the time, but it will now as you move forward in your career.
Yes and no. I think the only thing that I had an issue with was, we get sent to UCLA for regionals, and that's the first time we get to play outside of conference all year long.
Yeah.
And, we couldn't have our entire families there to support us if they weren't fully vaccinated, but yet we got no warning prior for them to get
Sure. The
vaccinated.
traveling. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so ending my career with not being able to have my most important support system in my entire life, not being able to be there, um, it was a very, very difficult weekend for me. And I have UCLA parents coming up to me afterward, and they heard about my dad's story and his battle with cancer and everything, and them not even being able to say something to him because they simply want to talk to him about his story and see how he was doing. And obviously, I appreciated that so much because my dad doesn't want to share a story. He doesn't always want to be on TV and things like that. It's kind of funny, but just seeing how much like his story made an impact on this whole entire softball world meant so much to me, and it made it worth it in that moment. um I think that at the end of the day, when it comes to athletes talking about family or being there for their support system, talking to them after games, you know that's something that you never can take away from them, because again, you never know when you're going to be in those type of situations again. And and at the end of the day, yes, those moments were rough during that whole year, but the Big Ten was trying to do what was they thought was best for our health and safety. Like, so it's hard to see both sides of it. I mean, I understand it being a part of the coach and as a player, but I mean, I hope it's something that truly no one ever has to live through again. And, no one knows what the best option was to do at that moment, what the healthiest thing was to do, the safest thing to do, it was just a year full of weird things. And, I'm glad we all got through it, but, you continue to learn from it, and what I can provide for my girls now, just to feel more like themselves and more confident, and, focusing on their mental health and doing the things that I can to help put them in the best mindset possible.
No, it's a valid point, and I've learned this covering around sports, like the little things, like having family members and the parents right there to see them right after the game, good or bad. That's a
Hmm.
big thing, especially for pitchers.
Hmm.
I've learned that. Like,
Yes.
nothing against
Yes.
the position players, but I've noticed that there's a unique bond. It's unique being a pitcher because you're right there in an island.
Hmm.
Every pitch matters, and the parents live on every
Hmm.
pitch, so they're going through an emotional roller coaster as they watch the pitcher play. So there's that emotional
Yeah.
bond that all sides need after the game, and you didn't have that,
Hmm.
unfortunately, because of the circumstances beyond people's control. So I can see
Hmm.
where that's a great point that you bring up. That things like that get lost. I don't think it was done maliciously or anything like that. It's just the way it was, unfortunately. And like you
No.
said, hopefully we
Right.
never go through that. But that's a great
Yeah.
perspective to bring up for sure.
Thank you.
What is next for you? I want to ask you, what is next for you beyond
Um,
beyond playing, and then obviously coming up here, because before you know it, you got fall ball around the corner here as you start for UNF, and I'm in a unique in the ASUN conference, and your goals there.
yeah. I mean, I don't know. I kind of live my life day by day at the moment. Whatever opportunities are thrown at me, I'll handle them then. But like I keep telling everyone, my last goal I have to accomplish for myself is to wear the red, white, and blue at least once. So I don't care what that necessarily looks like. That's the last goal I have for myself to accomplish, before I retire someday, trying to live and play out as long as I possibly can, however long the body lets me. Um, but I know I want to continue to play and grow the game. I think we're on the right track to where we want to be. Um, but after this weekend, it's time to reset myself mentally and physically and give myself a little bit of break from both. Enjoy time with family if I get the opportunity to, and then head back to Florida and then give them my full attention, because that's what they deserve. And I've had my girls support me throughout my entire season here. I know they'll be posting stuff about how I'm doing, and I know one of the girls reached out to me last week asking like, "Hey, coach, are you gonna throw live?" Because I just felt like I got so much better. So I'm like, whatever I can do to give back to them, that's what I'm gonna be focusing on when I go back to Florida. So.
And y'all have a camp coming up in late August, right, up at the
Yep,
UNF.
August 24th. August 24th. So if you want a nice little beach trip to Florida and, come to a practice, brush up on a few things, learn a few things, and then end your night at the beach or the morning at the beach, just you know where we're at.
Where can people find more information on that?
JeffConradSoftballCamps.com. Or you can go to the UNF website. There's the links in the bio of our Instagram page and should be on our Twitter page as well, or X page, whatever you want to call it.
How much hockey does he watch around you? Does he? Because he's a big
Oh my
hockey.
gosh.
Okay, yeah, a lot.
There's times where we come home for games or like back to the hotel, and then
He's got to get his Rangers hockey fix, right?
yeah, so we come back to the hotel and we'll, like debrief as a coaching staff. He'll have to cut it short because the hockey game's on. So he's like, we'll talk about this tomorrow. We got to finish it up, but I got to go watch this game. So
I can recall, like, he was a volunteer at UCF, and I remember, like, we would watch hockey playoff games. I would see him downstairs. We would be watching, like, a Rangers Capitals playoff game that went overtime.
yeah.
Trust me, I'm quite aware. I don't know if he's talking. He's not talking to me right now because my Panthers eliminated his Rangers in the hockey playoffs. I kid.
Maybe I'll have to message him that and remind him and see what he says.
You definitely can. I give you permission to do that. Is there motivation? And obviously, you'll know as you get to the fall, you'll have some new faces. You obviously got some returners. But the fact that you were that close to that NCAA, the conference championship, Florida Gulf Coast winning it. I know that from what I understand, the ASUN conference is going to go by divisions this year. So there's a lot of changes. We'll have Coach Conrad on later in the fall to talk more about that. But just being that close,
Mm-hmm.
does that help kind of, I would imagine, the off season, getting ready here for this season for the players, that motivation? Like, there shouldn't be much said after being that close,
Yeah.
right?
I mean, absolutely. I think Mario and I talked a lot about like just been a part of this conference for a few years now, and it was our first time for Mario and I. So we know what more to expect and how to prepare, for the people in our conference more this year. So I think that he gives us a good perspective on where we need to be at what time and when and how to approach different things. So if we're not motivated, then there's an issue. But I think that we are very motivated. We've made it very clear that, job's not done and we have a chance of, coming back and doing that again this year and winning it this year. So I'm really excited to work with our new team this year, our new staff, things like that, all the players that we brought in because, we bring people in that really want to be at UNF and help make a difference and get our program to where we want to be. And I think that postseason is something that's truly so special. And being a part of it in my career, there's nothing I want more than, my girls to be able to experience what postseason is like. So definitely a motivating factor for me, but I hope that they're just as hungry as I am.
What's the most important thing when you work with your pitchers in the fall to get
Mm-hmm.
accomplished? Is it mechanical stuff? What is it that you between now and say December that's one of your goals in your mind? Like we got to make sure that my pitchers get this done or etc.
I think the fall is used for a time to really grind out anything that we need. Get their pitch count up, their stamina up, working on challenging them mentally as much as possible. And then the spring is when we fine tune the last little things and just prepare us for different hitters and teams every weekend. But the fall is where we really crank it out and challenge them physically and mentally as much as possible, just so that they feel as mostly prepared as they can when it comes to season.
And your catchers are involved in that. Like you have your catchers involved as far as talking pitching and strategy a little bit too, right?
Yeah, so when I throw live to them, I threw twice a week in the spring. So one thing I really enjoyed that, not only helped me, but the catchers, I think a lot was I threw live and I made them pitch call. I forced them to pitch call. So when it comes to games or things like that, they'll be kind of thinking in the back of their head, like what I may call, but more so for them to pick up on hitters. So I'll let them, for instance, like if I notice a hitter's doing something and they call a pitch that I'm like, this isn't going to be good, I still throw it so they see an outcome of what could happen and be like, okay, now do you understand why I would want to throw this pitch in this moment because I noticed what the hitter is doing. So it, I think, truly helps the catchers identify a lot of different things about hitters and understanding what pitches are more important and what counts and things like that. So just continuing to challenge the catchers mentally, but picking up on the people that they're going to be facing against as well, because when it came to me sitting on the side and on the bucket, I can't really see what the hitter's like
Sure.
if I'm not on the mound. So they'll be able to like give me different signs or whatever if the hitter's more on the plate or moving within the at bat that I can't see from the side. So it just helps with that communication there.
That's fantastic. I
Yeah.
feel like you're old school in that regard, you know?
I guess,
I
yeah.
mean, I think that's refreshing because, right, we don't see that as much catchers being involved. But you're right, catchers have a unique perspective that could probably give you
Yeah.
some intel like, hey, this is what I'm looking at. They also know what the
Yeah.
pitchers throw. I mean, that's a great point. Did you come up with that on your own? Is that something you learned from Piper?
No, that's something I learned from Mary Iacopo and Deja Malikola. That is,
Wow.
I just being able to throw with them. Mary, especially in Vipers last year. I mean, her and I talked a lot in between innings and stuff like that. And, those are some of the best catchers that I've ever thrown to. And now I've got Kinsey Hansen and Haley Lee. And, the list just keeps on growing. I mean, Gwen, and I can't even tell you how many great catchers that I've thrown to in my career. And so just being able to learn from every single one of them, like I said, I was at AU learning from pitchers, but I was also learning from catchers as well. I had a chance to work with Aubrey Monroe. I can't even express the amount of I've learned from catchers being in the pros. I think more than anything that's helped me grow my game and be better with my pitches myself.
That's a who's who of catchers. I'm
Yeah.
gonna I'm gonna ask you off the air for like your top five. That way you don't get in trouble publicly. That's a
Oh
who's
gosh.
who. But that's an example where you still playing helps you as a
Mm-hmm.
coach because you wouldn't have learned that if you weren't still playing.
100%. Yep.
That's incredible. That's incredible.
Thank
That's
you.
awesome. Well, I've enjoyed talking to you. You've been on my list for a while,
Mm-hmm.
so I was glad to get this done. And like I said, congrats on the success you had, and not just as a player, but as a coach. I thought you guys were tremendous, and if maybe a little health, a little luck here, you probably would have won the title last year. But I think motivation speaks for itself for this upcoming
Thank you.
year with you and the job that Coach Conrad's done with the program. So I follow you all very closely there. So I'm sure we'll run into each other. But thanks for taking the time from your busy schedule to talk to us and tell a little bit about your story, because I think it's a cool story that I think people can learn from with everything, your journey
Absolutely.
to get to this point. And thanks for talking to us. We'll hopefully do this again soon.
Absolutely. I'm always up for another podcast.